I'm Elias, Monage, the president of the Black Business Council. We arrange what we call the BBC Summit 2023. We started the preparation for this summit for the past 3 months. Logistically, we secured the deputy president, and upon his confirmation, we start now making practical arrangements in terms of sending invitations to various organizations, finalizing the venue, looking at number of people that they need then to register online for both the summit for the 2 days. We invited a number of ministers and deputy ministers and ambassadors for this 2-day event, and that is the reason why we then took more than 6 months in terms of the logistical arrangement going back and forward. The theme for this summit is the reflection of the past 20 years of the broad-based black economic empowerment, because as an act, it was enacted way back, and that's the reason why this year we're celebrating 20 years of that act. And therefore, one of the issues that this summit was reflecting on the achievements, the gaps, and improvements in various pieces of regulations and legislation. A classical example is when you then look at the BE Commission. They don't have the power and the authority to prosecute and proceed on a litigation. And these are some of the issues that the summit identified and dealt with these matters. The second part is around the gains on the Competition Commission, where for the past 20 years we've seen a change in legislation, a change in amendments, where the Competition Commission was also then required to look at BEE as part of the requirements for any merger and acquisition. When you procure or a company is disposing it's another division of a company, they need then to consider black participation, because we cannot then talk about inclusive economy in the absence of bringing people that historically were excluded. And that's the reason why we're then looking at bringing and dealing with these matters. The other aspect that we have also then looked at for the past 20 years of reflection is what we call the inclusive economy. To what extent have we managed then to include black women, the youth, and people living with disability, because we don't have any legal prescript or any legislative environment that give expression to the inclusion of that category of people, let alone the Constitution deals with the government need to develop a legislation that must give effect to the Bill of Rights in terms of finding a legislation that must readdress the imbalances of the past. And that's the reason why the broad-based economic empowerment is supposed then to deal with those issues. Some of the gains that we're celebrating is the concept of a black industrialist program that was established a few years ago by the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition. And even that piece of a scheme, there are lots of gains. However, there's still lots of improvements in terms of looking at the requirements and the bankability of those projects. And these are some of the issues that we've dealt with for the past 2 days. And equally so, we have also dealt with the question of crime in the country, the question of unemployment, the question of disparity between the poor and the rich. And so that we need them to close the gap, because South Africa, in terms of the stats, have been defined and classified as a country with huge disparity between the poor. That gap, we need then to find a way of dealing with the gap in terms of closing between the poor and the rich. The other aspect is the question of quality of education that we have also then addressed and look at both academic processes, including even the trade skills, to say how then do we deal with those areas so that we then close the gap in terms of competency for people then to acquire vocational training and be competent on trade categories, so that they can then contribute in the economy of the country, either as entrepreneurs, because when you're an entrepreneur, you'll then be in a position to employ people. And these are some of the issues this summit dealt with. Equally so, we have also dealt with the energy issues, both the crisis in terms of ESCOM, lack of maintenance, and addressing what we call the base load in the form of nuclear and nuclear, gas, and the coal power station. Because in terms of a technical definition, the three constitute what is called dispatchable energy. They are not dependent on any weather, because it then gives you a sustainable energy in any given time. And again, we have addressed the questions of the gaps where ESCOM for the past period, they're not doing any maintenance of their fleet. And out of that process, we've seen the ESCOM continuing with the renewables in the form of wind and solar panels and the battery storage. And we're then saying that cannot qualify and justify a sustainable energy. Yes, of course, during that process of assessment, we're also then looking at how did we manage to influence the previous CEO of ESCOM to be dismissed, because he was not competent in addressing the current energy crisis in the country. Some of the issues and areas of concern, it was around what we call the car power ship, because car power ship was supposed then to come in and then provide a temporary solution. However, we've seen the green movements, what we call the non-governmental organizations in the form of NGOs that were opposing the car power ship. And I think for the past few months, we've seen government changing a tune in terms of dealing with these issues. The other part is when the car power ship have now given a lifeline in terms of coming in and providing sustainable energy in the next coming few months. And hopefully will then be managed to reduce the levels of load shedding in the next coming period. The other part that we have also dealt with as part of the reflection by the Black Business Council is the role of media and the judiciary, because we have seen media in recent past, they've dealt dismally with black people and black professionals and businesses, where they will run down companies on the basis that either they were corrupt without any due process being followed. And whereas on the other side of the fence or the coin, their white counterparts or white companies, they were not being dealt with, despite the fact that the Zondo Commission have dealt with the reports that says those companies that were caught up in the corruption exercises, they need them to pay the money. But some of them, they pay the money, but they're still doing business with ESCOM and other state entities. And we're then saying there is no fairness, because if we then talk about social justice and fairness and equitable society, it then means the judiciary must then apply the mind and be reasonable in addressing these issues. And the other part that we've also raised as part of the reflection is then to look at what we call the state bank, because state in the current form and shape, we don't have any bank that is black owned 100%. We don't have even a state bank that we can say confidently can compete with your ABSA and various other institutions. And these are some of the issues that we have reflected on, and we need them to soldier ahead in addressing those specific matters. I think the last part for us is the invitation by various embassies and high commissioners across the globe, from Brazil, India, Russia, Argentina, Domico, Cyprus, and so forth, that were part of this, including Turkey, because including even their trade missions, they were part of this dinner today, so that equally so when we talk about trade, when we talk about partnership, when we talk about business, we need also then to look outside the shores of our country, including even some of the deans of various regions, the ambassadors from the continent, from Mozambique, they were here as part of the engagement on the trade basis, so that we can then close the trade deficit between South Africa and various countries. The other part that we've also addressed is the question of the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, because we're then saying South Africa is a gateway to Africa, and therefore we need then to have a proper debate and discussions with our colleagues in the continent at the back of what we call the Africa Free Continental Agreement, because if we then have that, it then means we need then to talk about harmonization of tariffs, the movement of goods and services within the region. We need to talk about the logistics. We need to talk about the movement of people from one country to another, so that that process must be seamless in addressing all the specific issues. The other part that we've also done at this dinner is the recognition of individual institutions that have played a better and transformatory process. For example, the Standard Bank Group CEO Sim Shabalala was given an award as a transformed banking institution in the country. We then look at the composition of their board, we look at the executives, it reflects the demographics of the country. You then look at Ntate Mtswenyane as the co-founder of NAFCOC, and even the African Bank was given a lifetime award, so that we then recognize people while they're still alive for the things that they've done as the four bearers of the black excellence and black businesses. The other part that we have also dealt with is the recognition of the professionals. We have awarded 2 different awards to Pilisile, who was the CEO of National Economic Empowerment Fund, NEF, for the role that they've played in dealing with funding for black businesses. The second thing that we have also dealt and done is the recognition of the previous competition commissioner, Bonakele Tembinkosi, for his role that he have played in introducing certain changes in the competition commission. The other award, it was given to Soliman, the gift of the givers, for the role that they are playing, not only in South Africa but globally, in putting South Africa on the map on a number of issues, whether they can be floods, it can be devastation in any country. They played the role in Turkey, they played the role in various countries. So these are some of the things that we said we need them to recognize and acknowledge their roles that they've played. Because if we didn't do that thing, it then means we are then doomed as a society, as a country. And overall, I think the message from our Deputy President also, it resonates with us in terms of addressing the question of empowerment, so that empowerment should not be something that you tick a box. It must be something that both private and public institutions, they need them to consider and do it. Yes, of course, we are then looking at interdepartmental alignment and collaboration between business and government, so that we can then achieve a number of things together, both business and government. And in the main, that's how we then concluded the evening by this dinner that was well attended, despite the fact that both days, I mean, it was oversubscribed by a number of people, and there were a number of others. I mean, we ran this summit as a hybrid. Some people, they connected online, some they here physically. So that it was a success, both the dinner and the summit for 2023. And I think I've covered most of the issues for consideration.
You are helpful and giving us from how did it start to how did it end. So we're quite grateful, and we want to thank you also for your time that you can just share with us. And we appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Central TV.